to participants. So let me formally say good afternoon and welcome to the February Business to Business meeting hosted by Disability in North Carolina. My name is Beth Butler Fatal. I am Executive Director of Disability in North Carolina, and Pat Kuehl, my Operations Director, is also with me today. We're excited to have you join us. Little bit about who we are. We are a private nonprofit here in North Carolina. We've been around since about 2012. And our mission is really to help companies create cultures that are inclusive of people with disabilities. It's really pretty simple. We do that through hosting a number of programs throughout the year. These B2B meetings are something that we started last year as a way to kind of reach out to more businesses and give them an opportunity to come and kind of kick our tires, and through meetings like this bring topics that are important, that are relevant to kind of the day-to-day conversations that we're having internally about how we promote the employment, advancement, and inclusion of people with disabilities in our corporate cultures. So we brought these meetings, and so I'm super excited to hear that there are some that are here for the first time today. We want to give you guys an opportunity, and this is where I encourage you through the chat feature to engage with each other. So if you are here for the first time, and maybe something that Kirk says in his presentation kind of prompts a question, please put those in the chat, and we'll monitor that, but also engage with each other. And if you are interested in learning more about who we are a membership organization. And so we've got opportunities to kind of schedule more detailed conversations to share with you about our programming and events that are coming up and so forth. You can also go to our website and you can register to receive our e-newsletter. That's also a really good way to stay up to date on things that are happening here. So with that, Pat, are there anything else you want to add?
No, you've covered it all. I've got the chat box open for folks who want to drop in questions, but we will try to offer up some time towards the end for a more open discussion.
Absolutely.
And obviously questions with Dr. Adams.
Yeah. So with that, I want to introduce Dr. Kirk Adams. He is a professional speaker, and he's also the founder of Innovative Impact, an organization that focuses on groundbreaking, high-impact projects that accelerate this idea of inclusion of people with disabilities in the workplace. And he does that through kind of connecting the companies with the value of this work and how it impacts their bottom line. And you've certainly, if you've been around disability in North Carolina, you've heard that that information as well. And again, very, very compelling. He's earned his PhD in leadership and change. He is known as a master connector of key decision makers in government, in corporate America, in the nonprofit sector, and disability advocates, all guiding them to create that collaborative solution that has the real impact in increasing the employment of people with disabilities in their organizations. So Kirk is a great friend of ours. We have spent quite a bit of time together with him in the last, I'd probably say 6 months or so, and just learning more about the work that he does and how we can support one another. You know, Kirk actually sits in Seattle, Washington, or if isn't that right? Is it Seattle?
Yes, there's a Super Bowl championship parade going on right now, about 20 blocks to my west.
That's right. Congratulations to your Seahawks. I forgot about that. Yes, that's a big deal. That's a big deal. I like your colors in your uniform myself. So anyway.
Yeah, there you go.
But we're I'm from North Carolina, so you know, we kind of had to support Drake May at some point too.
Of course. Well, he'll have a good, long, fine career.
That's right. Just not this year.
Right. So how much time have we today? I want to make sure we have time for discussion. I want it to be
Absolutely.
A conversation.
So we've got it's 3:36 right now, and this runs till 4:30.
Okay.
So,
Well,
yeah, if we could
I'll allow
leave
plenty of
some-
time.
perfect.
Good. Well, thank you so much again. I'm Dr. Kirk Adams. I'm a totally blind person. And to meet my access needs today, I joined Zoom using a laptop with JAWS screen reading software. I have an 80-character Braille display attached to the laptop, and I'm reading some notes on a Android-based Braille tablet with refreshable Braille. My retinas detached when I was 5 years old. I became totally blind overnight, really. I went to a school for blind kids, first, second, and third grade. Learned my blindness skills, was given a couple of gifts by the school and the community. The blindness skills being one, a strong internal locus of control or sense of agency was another. And we'll talk about that a bit more. And high expectation. Not every kid with a significant impairment lives in an environment where there are high expectations held of them, and I was. That's a gift that I received as a little boy. And I want to thank Beth and Pat for including me today. You have a couple true leaders in disability employment inclusion in your state. And I think I first learned of Beth around 2002 or so when I attended my first disability and conference, and she has been carrying the torch wonderfully since then, and I've gotten to know Pat recently, and she has deep expertise. I want to talk a little bit about my dissertation. I did earn a PhD in leadership and change and finished in 2019, and my dissertation was a ethnographic study of blind adults successfully employed in large American corporations, large being 1,000 employers or more. And it's called Journeys Through Rough Country. It's the title. And I frame my comments with establishment of just two kind of important concepts. One, and I won't belabor them, but one is the distinction between impairment and disability. So I have a visual impairment. I cannot see. Other people have hearing impairments, mobility, cognitive, etc. But just because we have an impairment does not mean we're always in disabling situations. Sometimes we are, sometimes we're not. And that's really related to the medical model, the ADA definitions, and the social model, where we look at the three built environments that we have. We have the physical environment, the digital, and the social. And we're put in disabling situations when our impairment does not allow a good fit with the environment in the way it has been built. And I have a little example I often use if I'm asked to run a board meeting, which I've done many, many times, and I walk in, sit at the conference table, and someone hands me a stack of Braille with my agenda, my financials, and my committee reports. I am not in a disabling situation because I have an accommodation. I'm reading Braille, and I can run the meeting as effectively as anyone. If you hand me those documents in print, my visual impairment does not allow me to interact with that physical environment of printed material. So I'm in a disabling situation then. So we like to talk about that. The other is really strengths-based concept that the lived experience of disability allows us to develop unique strengths that are really valuable assets in the workplace. So a book I like called The Talent Code talks about how we develop strengths as human beings by overcoming increasingly difficult challenges. And if you're going to be an Olympic athlete or a world chess champion or a concert musician, you're going to be set increasingly difficult challenges very intentionally, methodically, with coaching and support. And when you live every day with an impairment, you are faced with increasingly difficult challenges in a much more haphazard way, but they do become more complex as you get older and progress through school and try to go through the school to work transition and do the things that we like to do. Like some of us like to get married and have families and buy houses and go on vacations, and all those things have environments around them, physical, digital, and social, and there's constant disabling situations that we need to deal with by creative problem solving. We develop a lot of grit and perseverance and resilience, and we are put in situations where we need to communicate really well. We need to pay a lot of attention to detail. We need to work in a lot of diverse teams. So I want to always frame my conversations with employers around disability employment around the strengths-based concept. So when I interviewed really cool blind people working at a lot of companies whose names you know, whose products you use, there were 9 themes that emerged. I'll just read the 9 through once, and then I'll elaborate a bit on each one. So monetary compensation, achieving a sense of agency, acquiring high-level knowledge, skills, and abilities, support from family, participation as a part of a team or group when young, supported and valued by immediate supervisor, employer accommodations and accessibility, inclusivity as a core value of senior management, and finally, disappointment. So the first, monetary compensation, I asked people to self-identify as successfully employed when I send out my inquiries to find participants. And the people who responded said, yes, they did self-identify as successfully employed, and asked them on what basis did they feel they were successful. And they all said money in some form, compensation. One of the people I interviewed, Joe, said, I'm not just making ends meet, being able to go out with friends and being able to have some amount of financial free will to make purchases, not activities that could be out of the realm of someone who's just barely employed. Now, only 35% of us with significant disabilities are in the workforce. The majority of us who are employed are working in nonprofits or governments. So there are some ceilings to the income levels we achieve. We're in a much narrower band of occupations than the general population, and we tend to stick toward the bottom few levels of the org chart. So 1/3 of us are living in poverty. Home ownership is 1/10 of the general population. So I present to you money as a key factor in people with disabilities feeling they're successful in employment. The next is agency, or internal locus of control. Savannah said, I fell down a set of stairs, so that's what led me to go to the Orientation Center for the Blind. That changed things for me. Hiking, rock climbing, downhill skiing. So me at the School for the Blind as a 6, 7, 8-year-old, they intentionally, I didn't know it then, but I know now, they intentionally fostered a strong internal locus of control in us, which was the feeling, deep in our bones that we could overcome challenges, we could figure things out, we could do what we wanted to do with our lives, as opposed to a strong external locus where you think things happen to me and I can't really do much about it. And one of my participants talked about being a 10-year-old blind girl and her twin sister who was sighted. Their parents put them on the bus to sleepaway camp. And they got to the point in the week where it was time to do horseback riding. Counselors told this young blind girl, no, sorry, that's danger or liability. You're not going to be able to ride the horses. You'll need to sit here. And she remembers her and her sister sneaking out of the cabin at night and going to the stable, getting horses, getting on horses and riding through the night. And she just remembers that feeling of freedom and power and liberation. That's what gave her strong internal locus of control. And almost everyone I interviewed had some sort of experience, something experiential, often outdoors, often to do with something physical and exhilarating that stuck with them, gave them that sense. So the third is knowledge, skills, and abilities. Everyone I talked to understood that they had to be able to do the job that they were getting paid to do. So Anthony said, I don't think they knew I was blind. If you can come in and do the code, then usually they're pretty happy about that. So there's a concept called the expanded core curriculum that I'll talk about in a bit, but at some point when you're a blind kid, you get the news that you have to learn all the stuff the other kids are doing, and you have to be able to pass these tests and write these papers, but you also have to learn all these other things. So we'll talk about that in a second. So family was really important. Gentleman named Henry said his family gained self-realization that we could work with this blindness thing, and that there would be no reason other than what other people put up in terms of barriers why I couldn't be as successful as their other three boys. So I had a participant whose mother, when she was a student, when services were scarce, tape recorded all of her textbooks, stayed up at night and recorded next day's chapter for her. Now, not everyone is born into families with those resources and capabilities. So our question is, how can we provide the supports for those who don't have them at the family level? So I mentioned high expectations, and that this gentleman who said his parents expected him to be as successful as their three other sons. They had high expectations for him, and those high expectations become internalized. For kids, we think about developmentally appropriate activities. I talk to parents of blind kids a lot, and I say, whatever your sighted kids are doing at that age, the blind kids should be doing at that age. So if your sighted child's out 4 years old in the playground, squabbling over a toy in the sandbox and falling off the slide, then your blind kids should be out there with their cane doing that. If you're a middle school student is meeting their friends at the mall to go to the movies, I don't know if kids still go to the mall, but your blind kids should be doing that too, and figure out how to use public transportation. Now we have rideshare, which is a beautiful thing. So how do we create these experiences in our workplace that are professionally appropriate for the person with disability? The fifth was teams and groups and the importance thereof. And I was a little bit surprised by that, but then when I thought back about it, my high expectation of my father, who was a basketball coach, was that my children will be involved in sports at school. So I wrestled and ran cross country. I sang in a really pretty high performing choir. And a woman named Clara said, I did lots of sports growing up, learning teamwork. Michelle said, singing in choirs. It helps you in terms of getting in front of people and expressing. So back to the talent code. The lived experience of disability, if you're participating in teams, you are learning some really valuable skills about how to be a teammate, how to rely on teammates, how to be a contributor to a team in unique ways. The sixth theme of the 9 was support from the immediate supervisor. And a participant named Lee said, he really saw me as somebody who had some capabilities, where other people had seen me as somebody who had a disability. Which was interesting. I worked, my first nonprofit job was a development officer for the Seattle Public Library Foundation, raising money for the statewide Talking Book and Braille Library. And I was put on a team by the head librarian to design a new employee recognition system for the 500 Seattle Public Library employees. And we did research, and it was probably my first real in-depth research project. And the one thing I remember most distinctly is that we did a qualitative and quantitative analysis and learned that what people valued most in employee recognition was immediate recognition from their immediate supervisor. The seventh was employer provision of accommodations and accessibility. And Tristan said, having the software tools, first of all, being fully accessible and usable in a way that makes someone with a disability able to be completely productive. So we know, looking at best practices, that centralized accommodation budgets are really important. I became the president and CEO at the Lighthouse for the Blind here in Seattle, which is a nonprofit social enterprise employing about 250 blind and deafblind people in businesses, primarily manufacturing. The most interesting being aerospace manufacturing, making parts for all the Boeing aircraft. And we had a lot of blind people in direct labor jobs, and we didn't have very many blind people in administrative management supervisory jobs. So we set a target to get that to 40%. And one thing that was really interesting is when I stepped into the role, accommodations were paid for department by department, and learned pretty quickly that there was some hesitancy at some department levels, either implicit or explicit, because they were judged on their bottom line results. And if they had a person who needed an accommodation like this Braille display, which is $10,000, sometimes there was a reluctance to provide that accommodation. So taking those decisions out of the department level and centralizing them is really important. And you probably already all know that, but I wanted to make the point. The eighth theme was support from senior management. And Henry said, our whole senior management team here is very supportive. Diversity and inclusion, they're not only looking at it from an employment perspective, diversity is a multi-threaded strategy. So when I talk to blind job seekers, and I talk to many of them, because as we mentioned, only 35% of us in the workforce, many of us feel underemployed. I say, look for some things. First, I say, go to the disabilityin.org website and look at the corporate partner list and scroll down it and see what pops out at you. And then look to see if they have inclusion and disability as in their formal DEI statements. Extra points if they add the A, DEIA. I say look for ERGs. Use LinkedIn and find another person with your disability who's working there and talk to them. Find out how the accommodations processes work. And the ninth and final theme was disappointment. Everybody had a pretty significant level of disappointment in their employment experience. And Tristan said, I experienced a lot of roadblocks along the way, particularly in the area of work tools that I've needed. It has made me feel more alienated than I've ever felt. So given that brief overview of the findings, how do we lead in this space? And how do we create change? The workforce participation number, 35%, it hasn't changed much in decades. It might go from 32 to 37 and back depending on the economy and what's going on. But what do we do? I personally have really focused on collaboration and building bridges across silos. And there's a book that I like called Forces for Good. And it's research based. I'm a researcher. So they looked at 12 kind of social movements and organizations that really were transformational. One is Habitat for Humanity, one is City Year. There's a number of others, and their premise is, in order to make anything truly significant happen, you have to align stakeholders across the four sectors: government, corporate, nonprofit, community. So in my world, government usually takes the form of vocational rehabilitation, some form or fashion, as I'm working with companies to help them employ more people with disabilities. I always say we need to make voc rehab do what they're supposed to do. They have budgets, and they have people, and they have expertise, and they have policies, and they have laws. We need to bring them into the mix. From the corporate side, I already mentioned disability in. I've taken multiple clients on a field trip to Anderson, South Carolina, to visit the Walgreens warehouse and distribution center there. That gentleman, Randy Lewis, spearheaded back in 2007. He was tasked to build a warehouse and distribution center from the ground up. Has an autistic son, and got buy-in from Walgreens to design the facility intentionally to be inclusive of people with developmental disabilities. They have about 40% of their workforce are people with disabilities there, and they've really without reading the book Forces for Good, they've done the model. They involve the state vocational rehabilitation system from the beginning. Of course, they were the corporate piece. They involved community-based nonprofits and the state interested in employment of people with disabilities, and they brought in families. They brought in families with kids with developmental disabilities to help them plan and help them create the program. So that's a spending a day there is a wonderful thing. So there's a small university there called Anderson University, and they've been tracking data from the beginning, and now they've done it with some other organizations, but they have good data that shows the Anderson facility is the Walgreens' most productive, lowest turnover, lowest absenteeism, best safety, best employee satisfaction. And they found that some really significant things start happening with corporate culture when significant numbers of people with disabilities are hired into a work group or a department or a company, and they see the tipping point at about 20%. That when 20% of the people self-identify as having disabilities, great things happen around innovation and compassion, communication, teamwork. So that it can really transform culture. So few more things to say. Sometimes I'm asked by companies, how do we get started? How do we get started? And I really strongly suggest people strategically start focusing on self-disclosure. When you look at companies and they self-report how many people with disabilities they employ, it's 1.5 to 4%. We know demographically it's probably closer to 15%. So there's a lot of people in every company with disabilities that haven't self-disclosed for whatever reason. And I just say start normalizing, start talking about disability and accommodations. I had a client here in Seattle called Seattle Theater Group that runs three historic venues: the Neptune Theater, the Paramount Theater, and the Moore Theater. And their new executive director had 2 kids with pretty significant disabilities, and he wants their staff, their volunteers, their audiences, and their performances to mirror our community here in King County. So that would mean something like 15-20% people with disabilities. So I was talking to their HR director when I was doing the discovery process, and she said, well, we have one person working here who has a disability, and it was a gentleman who was nonverbal and very developmentally disabled and came 2 afternoons a week with a job coach and was a valuable part of their maintenance team. But as we continued to talk, she said, could I ask you to move to my left side? I don't hear very well out of my right ear. And so we kept on talking, and we talked about team meetings. And she said, "Oh, it's in a really echoey room. I can't really hear it that well." And so we talked about technology and FM systems and closed loop. And she came to realize that yes, she had an impairment that didn't always allow her to have a good fit with her work environment. A month later, she had accommodations. Her work experience was better, and she was a more productive employee. So I just encourage people, as I did at the beginning of this presentation, I said I'm a blind person. To meet my access needs, I'm using this, and this. To start talking about that, to make sure you're offering accommodations in the hiring process. In performance reviews, just bake it into whatever systems you currently have. So at performance review time, train your manager to say, just a reminder, we want to provide the tools, technologies, training to all of our employees so everyone can be as successful as possible. For people with impairments, that might take the form of whatever, larger monitor, different lighting. The talk about it at staff meetings. If you have the capacity to have an ERG, a beautiful thing. So I know we're all a work in progress. The fact that we're talking about these topics to the extent we are is a much different feel than 25 years ago when I first went to my first disability conference. Beth will probably remember this. It was at the Gaylord at National Harbor near Washington, D.C. And there were about 300 people there, and they were mostly HR specialists who were trying to figure out how to hire a person with a disability. And now you go to the disability and annual conference, and it's a much more vibrant, strategic, high level dynamic, which is very encouraging. And I do want to say the people identified off, some of them were real pioneers, some of them were outliers, some of them demonstrated unusual, unique levels of tenacity, perseverance to get where they got in their companies. So my mission is to make it easier for the next kid, the next blind kid, the next wheelchair user child, the next deaf child, the next neurodiverse child. I want to make it easier for them to thrive, depending on what their definition of thriving is. If their definition of thriving includes being meaningfully employed, I don't want them to have to I don't want them to have to be an outlier in their levels of tenacity and perseverance. So I know you all share a passion for inclusion of people with disabilities in the workforce. I want to thank you for allowing me to speak to you. I want to thank you for taking time out of your busy days to be here, and would love to have a conversation, answer questions. Anyone can have the mic. Beth and Pat, it's back to you.
Fantastic. Kirk, thank you. And I'll say this as a fellow blind person, so much of what you said resonates with me when I think about, and you can't read you can't, the chats that I've been throwing in there, the value of being a part of a team, right? Your parents not setting low expectations for you. I mean, I was not cut any slack. I can share stories of some things that are appropriate to share, others that are not. We had a dog, and part of your job was, back in the old days before we had poop bags, you had to go out and, you had to clean up the backyard. And that, I had my rotation just like everybody else. I played fast pitch softball, on my sister's softball team. Played catcher even, and that was after braces, right? So kind of a gutsy move, you invest in my mouth and then you put your blind daughter behind home plate. And yeah, so but those kinds of experiences are so important for us to give our young people, and so I'm right there with you. I think it sets the tone, I think, early, that you've got to adapt, you got to find a way, and it really does kind of build up that muscle of things are not always going to be um, in the best accommodating form, but
Hmm.
adapting, right, and being a part of a team and sharing. We had had a strategy with my coach. You could steal bases and I couldn't see when he would grab his hats or he would brush his chest and all of those things. So we had audible, nobody knew, but we had audible cues of when it was okay to steal base, that kind of thing. So those were
Yeah,
all accommodations, right?
yeah, that's right.
And so I love that. Um, thank you for sharing a lot of great information, and I want to open it up for comments, questions. I know we've got some on today's call for, so um, would invite folks to either take yourselves off mute and ask Kirk a question, make a comment. Happy to hear folks.
I'll go if no one else wants to go.
Great.
Okay, Mike Webb. Why do you think with the advances in technology, obviously, the things have changed since you were a kid terms of
Yeah.
in terms of being able to address impairments in the workplace. Why do you think the number of employment the employment percentage hasn't correspondingly moved up with technology? Because technology would seem like a game changer, but it obviously hasn't been since the
Yeah.
number stayed at 35% around for decades.
Well, the low workforce participation rate for people with disabilities is a really complex issue, so there's no really real easy answer. But when I think about it, I think about that developmentally appropriate um, arc of human development. So I talked about the kid in the sandbox and the middle schooler going to the mall, and the next step, teenagers get jobs often. Also, I have great nieces and great nephews and grandchildren now who are 2, 3, 4 years old, and they have technology in their hands. I don't know if you've heard of something called a Yoto, but my grandkids have it. They've got the little digital cards, and they have a daily podcast they can listen to. I see kids with watching stuff on the iPad, and our kids with disabilities are not getting exposure to technology at the same level, not even close to the same level. My parents were 25 years old when my retinas detached and I became blind. They had never met a blind person in their lives, and oftentimes kids with disabilities are born into families that don't have experience, don't have any exposure. It's hard to find information, even with today's resources. It's hard to find expertise. It's hard to find resources. It's hard to know what to do. So it starts there, and it's hard to make sure your kids with disabilities are getting a developmentally appropriate set of experiences. And then you get into school, and it's really hit or miss. Are you in a district that has experience with kids with your disability? There's the IEP process where every kid is entitled by law to an individual education plan that's supposed to give him the most appropriate education. And that's where things get written down. This is what this child will receive. This is what they'll learn. This is how many hours of instruction in this they'll get. This is how many hours of instruction in that will get. It often is a struggle. Parents often don't know what to ask for. School districts often, for whatever reasons, try to take the easiest route. Sometimes the less expensive route. Here in Washington State, if you have a blind kid, you move to Edmonds, Washington, because they have a school district that has proven to really know how to educate blind kids. If you're born into a family in a rural part of the country, as I was, we live after the School for the Blind. I live in a small rural town, Silverton, Oregon, Snohomish, Washington. I was always the only blind kid in the district. So you have that, and then early work experience. Like I said, where I grew up, when kids turned 16, they all got driver's licenses and they all got some sort of job doing something. Fast food or working on a farm or whatever. And so only like 23% of us with significant disabilities get some sort of paid work by the time we're 23. And 65–70% of the general population get some sort of paid work before they're 23. So when you're out there competing as a person with a significant impairment, the general population, and they have 4, 5, 6 years of some sort of experience, and you have none, you're definitely at a disadvantage. So it starts really early and progresses kind of along the arc. And then from the employer side, if you read the research around blindness employment, and you ask, what are the greatest, you ask blind people, what are the greatest barriers to successful employment for you? The top 2 answers, always vying for 1 and 2, are transportation and employer attitudes. So when I got out of college and I started looking for jobs in finance, I would send my cover letter and my resume and get a phone interview. I was a cum laude, Phi Beta Kappa 4 in my econ degree, and I'd get a phone interview. It'd go great. They'd say, "Come on in for the in-person." I'd walk in with my white cane, my slate and stylus, so I could take some notes in Braille. And person across the desk had probably never likely worked with a blind person before, did not know our tools, techniques, or training. Probably did some projection thinking, if I woke up tomorrow and I couldn't see, there's no way I could do this financial analyst job. I don't know how this kid thinks he's going to do this job. So there's that piece. So again, not an easy answer, but I think multi-pronged challenges need multi-pronged approaches for solutions.
Thank you, Doctor.
Yeah.
Yeah, Kirk, I thank you for that. And yeah, you walk through with such such breadth to your answer. And there are so many facets and so many levels. You're right. I mean, I recall one of my first interviews after passing the bar exam. I go into a law firm, and I love it because we're about this, probably close to the same age. So you're talking about resumes and cover letters and the managing partner.
I had the IBM Selectric with the eraser.
Yeah. And I had the hiring manager, right? The firm manager is looking at my resume, and he looks up at me and he looks at the resume and looking at me. You don't know, because I don't have a cane, right? I just walk in and I sit down, and he looks up, and I had a reference on my resume about an award that I received in law school that was specific to a disability, right? So it was, and then I was a member of the American Blind Lawyers Association on my resume. So he looks down at my resume, looks up at me, looks down at and he looks at me, he goes, "What are you, blind?" was the first thing out of his mouth. Sitting there, and I'm going, did he really just say that? And I just stone face looked right at him, and I said, as a matter of fact, I am. And I know nothing else. I didn't dig him out, anything. But it's true, right? It's like that alone. I didn't get the call back. Of course, I love what you said, projection thinking, I'm sure starts, right? In terms of what ifs. Gosh, how would I conduct myself as an attorney? How is she going to get to court? How is if she can't drive? I mean, all of those things.
Right. The beautiful part about disability is it's either people who don't have the attitude problem or have a very positive attitude problem about disability inclusion or want to learn.
Right.
So
yeah.
Like I said, when people ask me about career pathways, the first thing I say is go look at the disability.org website, look at the corporate partners list and see, who pops out of you. Are any of these companies have a large presence in your community? Are any of them headquartered where you would like to live? Let's make a list of 8 or 10 and start there.
Right. No, that's true.
And Dr. Adams, I loved what you shared about the disclosure as a first step.
Yeah.
And I think we've got to open up those doors and make it okay to talk about these things within companies, because just by doing that, we're going to break down some barriers.
Yeah, that's right.
Then the other thing I want to bring back is this idea of the work experience. There's a very high correlation between students with disabilities and the absence of internships and targeted job training. And I think that's a huge informer of why we have such a high unemployment rate among young people with disabilities. If you don't get that first job, if you don't get that internship, if you're not encouraged. And I think sometimes people forget that there's a big hassle factor around managing the disability.
Yeah.
And that hassle factor can actually make, for example, a college student not even sign up for those things because they're wondering, all right, so I'm going to have transportation. I'm going to have accommodations, blah, blah, blah. And it's not stepping forward to offer those things.
That's right. And I see in the blindness community, we're the most highly educated, unemployed disability group. There's more blind people with 4-year degrees who are unemployed as a percentage than any other disability group. And you might be 21, 22, 23 and have a degree and have zero work experience, and you're out there competing with people who've done summer internships and had work. And say everyone needs their first crappy job. Sometimes as a person with disability, you might want to take that. You might have to have that entry level job at a little later down the age range.
But you have to have
some of your peers, but you have to have it.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and I think these are two things within the control of business and industry. One, having disclosure campaigns that are welcoming and comfortable for folks to share their news. And two, developing internships and opportunities for those first jobs for people with disabilities.
Absolutely.
Great. Other questions, comments? This is so great. I mean, awesome conversation.
This is Ann McIntosh, and I just wanted to throw this out that part of what I think people with disabilities can do is, instead of just making a disclosure that I have a disability, that they actually turn that into a strong point and say, I'm going to be able to represent a part of your customer base or your client base. I am going to be able to bring a perspective that your current team may not have in terms of problem solving or pivoting. You could just really turn that disability into an asset. And I'm not trying to blow smoke up anybody, because I really do think that having a disability enables us to see things that people who do not have a disability are not able to see. And it enables us to expand their marketplace. You're missing out on key blue ocean and market space if you are not catering to these kinds
Yeah.
of people, whatever these kinds of people be with your disability. So you can really chop that up and say, I can add value to your company. I can add value to your team if you want to expand, if you want to grow and use all these positive connotations, as opposed to I have a disability and I need these accommodations. It all becomes about you and how they have
Hmm.
got to adapt to you, as opposed to you coming in saying, I have a different set of skill set that you guys can
Yeah.
capitalize on, and it's going to improve your bottom line to do so.
Yeah, and that makes me think of two things. One is always telling young people with disabilities, you need to be a problem solver for the employer, not a problem creator. So you need to go in and paint a picture of how you're going to add value. And then I had a really interesting conversation. I was able to talk to a group of young blind high school students who were on a summer work experience here in Seattle, and there was a really bright, articulate kid going into his senior year in high school, and he really wanted a job, and he was applying for some jobs in the kind of medium-sized town he lived in Eastern Washington. And we were talking about, when do you disclose your disability? And back to my own job search. At first, I wasn't disclosing my disability, and then after I was not offered a bunch of jobs, then I started disclosing it in my cover letter and saying, this is how I've done what I've done. This is how I'll do the job. And then I wasn't even getting the phone interview. But in any case, I told him, I said, he mentioned a job he was applying for, so kind of a back office clerical thing. And I said, they're going to get 200 resumes that are all the same. And I guarantee you have done something remarkable in order to thrive as a person who's blind that these other kids your age haven't done. So I don't know what it is. Maybe you did a great science project. Maybe you took care of your siblings. Maybe you did chores on the farm. I don't know what it is, but you've done something that can demonstrate your creative problem solving, your resilience, your self-motivation, your leadership. So put it right out there that your blindness is a strength.
Yeah, fantastic. And yeah, a couple of things that, again, I think I when I look back on the role that I finally landed in corporate America, it was employment compliance, and it was defending, right, many times EEOC charges uh, around things related to employment and discrimination, and specifically disability. And
Mm.
when you talk about being an asset and kind of shifting that, there was no better person to go into an EEOC mediation than me, right? To
Yeah.
demonstrate that a company has, accommodated and does accommodate and actively accommodates and engages in that interactive process to defend, right, an attack
Mhm.
on an individual's claims that they weren't accommodated, or that they didn't, they weren't treated fairly related to their disability. And so it's absolutely an asset,
Yeah.
and can be. Now, how many companies actually kind of see that or recognize that? To your point, I mean, I think more today now than
Mhm.
when we started this journey. But I think that's a good example.
Yeah.
I think the other piece that I will say, I encourage young people especially to take that first, whatever that is. I remember as a licensed attorney, I was a cosmetics counter manager. That was my first job, right? A
Yeah.
legally blind chick putting eyeliner on people. Probably not the biggest, not like the job you'd go after, but I didn't disclose, right? I didn't share, because I knew, right, just like many of us know, I've used makeup forever, right? So I know
Mm.
how to apply makeup. I know what it looks like, all those kinds of things. And so stepping into that role was what landed me my first legal job, because one of the customers happened to have an attorney or a husband that was a partner with a law firm. So as I built that relationship with that customer, she learned more about who I was. And that's what opened the door, right, for that first legal position. And I always encourage, so many times, especially if you've got that degree, you think, oh, well, the world is mine and I'm going to sit back and wait for that first job. And you got to get out there, right?
That's right.
So,
Beth, you have to reveal now how you did the eyeliner trick. Otherwise, everybody's going to leave here thinking that you poked people's eyes out.
Oh, yeah, that's right. And it's funny because I had people come to me and go, yeah, well, and when my wife walks in and she's got eyeliner up by her eyebrow, I'll know that she came to your counter, which is not true. When it came to applying the eyeliner, I would hand them the eyeliner and I'd say, now let me show you how to apply it, right? And immediately they're thinking, well, I'm the professional, right? I'm the makeup designer. So they're feeling like, my gosh, I'm getting a professional lesson here. They had no idea that me going towards their eye with a sharp object would be more detrimental than helpful. And so but it worked, right? I mean, it still gave them that level of customer service, and I could walk them through, right, how to apply it and that type of thing. So yeah, again, there's so many stories out there, I think, like that, but it's that innovative way that we can adapt what our experiences bring to every job situation. And Kirk, you're such a great example of that in the examples that you've shown, and kind of what you do now to give back and to pour into to young people, right, and to young professionals.
Yeah, it's been a real pleasure getting to reacquainted with you, Beth, and getting to know you, Pat, to being engaged with your chapter. And for those of you who are here for the first time, thank you so much for stepping into the space and spending some time thinking about these things and reflecting. And I know together we can continue to improve the situation. And it's collective action, and the disability is a great catalyst. So hats off to everyone here.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you so much, Kirk. And we look forward to continuing our partnership, and you are welcome back anytime.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. And so with that, I'm going to thank you all for participating. And if you want to learn more, again, if you want to schedule time to listen and learn more from our partners, please, contact us. I know that we have some new participants call that were here first. I do want to give a chance. Is it Chef Maria Kemp with Beyond Decadence? Thank you so much for joining. And you want to take a minute and kind of share a little bit about the work that you do?
Sure, absolutely. I empower employers to improve retention by equipping leaders to assess performance fairly under real-life constraints, so employee caregivers and employees with disabilities can thrive at work. I use an interactive dessert-based assessment exercise to deepen understanding and drive action.
Sounds awesome.
So I found a very unique way to marry my dessert and professional pastry chef training into very meaningful work. I was a caregiver for 8.5 years for both of my parents. They've since earned their wings, and now this is the work I'm doing moving forward.
I love that. Love that. I would love to learn more. Love to learn more.
Thank you. Yeah, I would love that. The contact form has my information when you guys get that. Or I can just drop my email in the chat.
Yeah, that would be great. If you would do that, that would be fantastic. And then we'll connect and love to learn more.
Absolutely. I'm dropping it in there right now. I am outside of Charlotte in Huntersville.
Okay, fantastic.
Emails in the chat.
Wonderful. Wonderful.
And
Thank
I'll
you
drop
so
the
much.
website in. Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, there you go.
Great.
And
All
I
right.
want to
Is there-
remind everybody that we are a membership organization, and please check out whether or not you would like to come aboard as one of our sponsoring or supporting members. We would love to have you with us.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And our next business to business meeting will take place on March 11th as well. So we will have with us Jan Kelly from Recite Me, who will she is Recite Me is a digital toolbar that is designed to help create websites that are accessible to all types of disabilities. So they will be here to kind of highlight that tool, but also to talk about the upcoming deadline for regulatory requirements, especially for websites, particularly for it's a Department of Justice regulation that goes into effect in April. And so many of the colleges and universities, municipalities, and other websites and offices are going to, be, if they're not already, they need to be ready for the implementation of this type of a tool or regulation. So anyway, Jan Kelly will be with us. So look for information about that. And again, if you have topics that you'd love to hear more about, we are also open to your ideas and would love to hear from you. So with that, I want to thank you for your presence today. Thank you for the work that you're doing, and just as Kirk said, for stepping in to the conversation. This is how we drive change. So thank you so much. Have a great rest of your day.
Yeah.
Thank you. And I just saw your thing. I go over to the Hurt Hub a lot in Davidson.
Okay, my warehouse is right across from the Hurt Hub, so we probably passed each other in
Oh yeah,
at some point.
absolutely. Yeah, I was flipping
I'm
screens
over
and I
at the
just
Davidson Cotton Mill quite a bit.
okay, yeah, I was flipping screens and I just came back and saw your message, so I wanted to respond to that.
Okay.
I'm gonna put my Calendly link in the chat too, Beth.
Okay.
There we go. So if you want to schedule time on my calendar, then that way, we can talk a little bit more about what I do and just, see how we can align.
Yes.
Sure. And Beth also holds meetings over there at the Davidson Cotton Mill using Moy Hall and Brook House. So Beth and Pat are very familiar with the Davidson area. And I know that
Okay.
they've also been working to do some stuff at the Davidson College and so on and so forth. So this may be of interest to you, Maria. So you can maybe connect with Beth and Pat on that.
Okay. All right. Well, I put my Calendly link and my emails in the chat so that way, we can connect and, talk and just see what works best for everyone. But yeah, I'm not far from Davidson and it feels like I'm over at the hub a lot. I was over there a lot last year, but I still, have a team
Okay.
I work with over there now. So yeah, absolutely.
All right. Well, sounds good. Well, I would definitely send you an email. Thank
Okay.
you so much. And again, welcome to B2B.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, ladies. Bye, Beth. Bye, Ann.
Bye-bye. It's good to meet you.
Good to meet you too.
All right. Bye-bye.